Let us pray. Dear God, as Rotarians, we are called to be inclusive. As leaders, we champion inclusivity, sometimes quietly, sometimes with righteous indignation, and sometimes ahead of the needs of ourselves. To do great things is difficult, but to lead others to greatness is even more difficult, yet in the end, more rewarding. Please guide our Rotarians here today to forge new paths, to create new opportunities, and to humbly ask for your guidance. Let us all remember that we never stand taller than when we kneel to help another along the journey of life. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our sponsor this month, for the entire month, is Stapleton Insurance. Thank you, Stapleton Insurance. It's very important to us. Tom Wright, where are you? Will you introduce visiting Rotarians, please?
Thank you, President Tim and fellow Rotarians. President Tim, we have two visiting Rotarians today. Cheryl Ruckland from Findlay, the Noon Club. Please stand. And Chris Yunker, coming all the way from Mountain Home, Arkansas. Thank you. That's my full report, President Tim.
Okay. Sharon, I thought you were Cheryl. Have you changed your name? Welcome from Findlay. It's always good to work with you. Chris from Arkansas. Welcome, though I understand you're a Perrysburg girl. All right, welcome. Can I invite members to introduce guests, please?
Good afternoon, President. I have here Pedro Ferland Almeida, who is our Rotary Youth Ambassador, studying at St. Francis.
Welcome.
He'll address the club later this year, I suppose.
Okay, so...
And his Rotary Club in Brazil has 15 members.
Welcome to the United States.
Thank you.
Today I have Sam Meldon. He's the newest member of the Ability Center staff and is the Director of Community Engagement. Sam.
Welcome, Sam.
President Tim, my guest today is my younger brother, Steve Nassim from City Telecommunications. He used to be a Rotarian. He quit a few years ago. But he says he misses his Rotary friends and his brother. But this time he's kind enough. His new sales manager is Brian, who just joined the club. So I'm really pleased to welcome Steve and his new manager as well. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome.
President Tim, my fellow Rotarians, as some of you know, we've been doing some amazing work collaborating with community organizations as part of the Peace Committee. One of those organizations is the Buffalo Soldiers, and I think every week they just keep multiplying, so we're being overrun by this great motorcycle club. But I'm pleased to introduce Earl Mack, the President and retired Deputy Director of Ohio Homeland Security, and a member of the Buffalo Soldiers, also the 2019 recipient of the Medical Mutual Northwest Ohio Senior Volunteer Service Award, and the 2019 recipient of the Jefferson Award. We have Larry Taylor, who is Badger, all the way in the back, Quartermaster and retired U.S. Army Master Sergeant. I have to my right Paula Higgs Hudson, who this club certainly knows, former mayor of Toledo, the Legal Eagle, attorney and legal advisor, District 44, Ohio House of Representative, Minority Whip. We have Lorinda McCaleb. Miss Hogg is the treasurer. And we also have, where am I at here? I almost forgot. How could I forget Fred Lefevre, the Fever. The Fever. He spelled it with a B. I'm very confused. Public Information Officer, PIO, and WSPD Morning Show radio host. So please welcome members of the Buffalo Soldiers to our club today.
Welcome, Buffalo Soldiers.
We have one more guest. Maria?
So actually, I have 3 guests visiting. The first is Teresa Holmes. She is the chair of the Racial Equity and Inclusion Committee for the Madison, Wisconsin Rotary, which is the 6th largest Rotary in the world. I have to say that. My daughter, Catherine White, who's a pediatric hematology oncology nurse at Toledo Children's Hospital, and Jill Blackburn, who is a regional area director for American Family Insurance.
Teresa, I understand why when I talk about Toledo Rotary, I always say that we're the 10th largest club in the world. I don't understand why when you talk about Madison Rotary, you have to say that you're the 6th. Rick Marshall, are you out there somewhere?
Thank you, President Tim. The Disability Services Committee is excited to announce the continuation of a Toledo Rotary tradition, and that is our annual Zoo Day with the students from Glendale Fieldbach Elementary. Students from Glendale Fieldbach are those with developmental disabilities. The Rotary was actually instrumental in starting that school many, many years ago, and we have a tradition of engaging with those students on an annual basis, and the Zoo Day is really our signature event, where we match volunteer Rotarians with students from Glendale Fieldbach and tour them around the zoo for the morning. We also engage with students from St. Francis who help us with that, and it's just a great experience to watch. This year's Zoo Day is going to take place on Friday, September 27th. We'll get started at 9 a.m. and we'll wrap up around 1 p.m. or so after we have lunch with the students at the zoo. Please note, this is a change in date. Originally, you may have seen some materials that indicated September 24th as the date. It's going to be now, due to some scheduling issues with the school, we're going to September 27th, Friday. We need lots of Rotary volunteers, and it's a great experience. Had an opportunity to do it last year. I tell you, you will come away inspired. You'll come away inspired by the students of Glendale Fieldbach and being able to spend some time with them, and you'll also come away inspired by the young men from St. Francis who join us, who engage with these students as well, and just the maturity of these young men. So please, you're welcome to sign up online for the event. Be glad to have you. We need lots of volunteers, so please join us on September 27th. Thank you.
Hold on, Rick. How many years have we been doing this at Glendale Fieldbach in the zoo?
20 plus, I'm sure. It goes back well before my time, but I'm sorry? 50 plus years.
We've been associated with Glendale Fieldbach for 50 years, or we've been taking children to the zoo?
Tim went when he was 6 to the zoo, so over 50 years to the zoo. And we were associated with Glendale Fieldbach since the founding of the school.
So is this going to cost members anything when they go?
No, there's no cost to Rotarians. It is funded by a grant from the foundation.
Okay, do you get a T-shirt?
You get a T-shirt. And you get a bottle of water for the day, and you get a hearty picnic lunch with the students at the zoo.
Okay, and you changed the date, if I understood you. This is the 27th of September.
It is. We had originally scheduled the 24th, and we ran into a conflict with one of the schools, so it was changed to the 27th. If you did already sign up for the 24th, I believe we need you to sign up again for the 27th.
Important point. For the next 20 minutes, you will be my hero. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Steve Miller, are you out there somewhere?
President Tim, fellow Rotarians, our 7th annual Jim Vassar Memorial Golf Outing will take place at Spuyten Duyvil on Saturday, September 14th at 10 a.m. If you are familiar with Jim Vassar, he was a engaged Rotarian and a board member with Toledo Rotary, and sadly passed away from brain cancer 7 years ago. And we have a outing in his honor, and Toledo Rotary Foundation is one of the beneficiaries. We've now raised over $100,000 on behalf of of Jim and his family to donate to the various charities that they support. It's $85 a person for golf, includes dinner, beer on the golf course. It's a great event. We have a lot of fun. The weather is always going to be 75 and sunny, and we look forward to seeing everybody there.
Okay, Jim, don't leave. Jim Vassar. How many people knew him? He's done, it's sad that he's gone. He was a great Rotarian, and this is a wonderful memorial for him. Thank you very much, Jim. Yep. Earl Mack, do you have a cell phone? Yes, sir. Turn it off. Okay. I'm changing the lineup of the presentation today. Do we have a photo coming up? This little girl, thanks to you, and in small part thanks to me, is never, ever, ever going to get polio. And the reason I know that is because I vaccinated her. And the reason that you're involved is because you paid a lot of money to provide the assistance for the Polio Plus program. And the reason her picture is up there today, along with the fact that she's a beautiful little girl that's not going to get polio, last week, Nigeria went 3 years polio free.
Tim, when I look at this picture, you and I have talked about this, and those eyes really reach out to you. I know you get very sensitive, I guess that's a good word, about this trip. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you felt and what you took away from the trip to Nigeria?
It was one of the most moving experiences of my life. It took place about 5 years ago. I vaccinated in a number of countries, always with Rotarians, always leaving with the feeling that we left the community much better. I happened to be in Nigeria when vaccinating kids, and I met the last kid in Nigeria with polio. And here we are all these years later, and the country, not just the country, but Africa is now polio free. It's the most moving experience of my life. And I'm very grateful to be a Rotarian because of that. Thank you. We are not having a meeting next week, and that means that the meeting on September 9th is our next meeting, and that's not going to be here. If you show up here, you're going to have to quickly drive to the Stranahan, and RSVPs are required because we want to know how many lunches to get. So if you'd let us know. Kevin Mullen, where are we meeting on the 7th? Oh, where are we meeting on the 9th? Stranahan, all right. Yes, they should. I'm sure they will after the meeting. Okay, Scott Henshaw, would you join us at the podium and talk about member engagement and then follow up by introducing our program today?
Thank you, President Tim. I want to take this opportunity. I got two jobs today. One is to talk a little bit about membership engagement, the committee that I chair this Rotary year. My vice chair is Maria White, who's one of our presenters today. And I want to just let you know a little bit about what we've got going on this year. Our purpose is to get members engaged outside of just the Monday meetings. with a show of hands, how many of you have participated in something, whether it's a community service project, it's a committee meeting, anything outside of the Monday meetings other than coming here today, right? That's a great number. Of course, it's our goal. We want to make it everybody, okay? There's so much that Toledo Rotary offers and provides to its members that we want to expand that to as many members as we possibly can. So here's a few things that we're doing this year. We're going to do 2 events this year that we've done in the past. We're going to do the March Madness event in the spring. It's a good opportunity to make a fundraiser and also to have fellowship. We're also going to co-host with the Community Services Committee the annual food pack. This last year, the food pack was really successful, 50,000 meals, 100 volunteers. So again, this is a great opportunity for you to get out, join some fellow Rotarians, and also do a good cause. Greeters is another thing. So I want to encourage all members, all Rotarians, to sign up to be a greeter. This doesn't have to just be the new members who are trying to get to know a few people. It gives you an opportunity maybe to see a few people you haven't seen in a long time, to talk to them for a few minutes before you sit down at a lunch and don't have an opportunity to talk at all. It's great for new members, too, to meet people, but there's probably a lot of new members that the veteran Rotarians don't know yet, and that gives you that opportunity, too. So I want to encourage you to sign up for that. We have a Sign Up Genius page for that makes it really easy. I'm happy to send it to you. Also, Katie has it, so please let us know if you want to do that. Another thing that we're doing in our committee is we're trying to look at the data. We kind of want to find out from the Rotarian Toledo Rotary data from the last several years, where is it that we can target members who are the least involved? And also, let's find out when and why do Rotarians decide to leave Toledo Rotary? So we've dug into that a little bit, and one of the things that we think we've realized is that the earlier that we can get somebody involved in whatever other activity it is outside of the Monday meetings, the better. That person is more likely to continue to be a Rotarian years 3, years 5, years 10, and out. And so what we've decided to do in trying to make that happen is to start a program called Rotary Ambassadors. And this isn't going to be like a typical mentor program where you have to keep tabs on somebody. Really what we're trying to do is give people the ability to understand information about the club. What can they sign up for? What can they get involved in? And so the Toledo Rotary Ambassadors are going to help new members make that happen. We want to make it easy for them to get their questions answered and to find the right information about the club. So the ambassador is going to motivate and guide new members to find what gives them the greatest joy within Toledo Rotary. And we're starting with the newer Rotarians, but the idea is also to expand that at some point to the 1 to 3 member group. Because if we can find out whether or not those folks are involved, or what they're involved in or not involved in, then that's a great target group too. Get more people understanding what our social groups are, our fellowship committees, our service committees, and of course the many, many things that we do outside of this club, the different events that we do, Zoo Day obviously being a fantastic example of one. So those of you I've already reached out to about being Rotary Ambassadors, thank you very much for agreeing and signing up to do that. If you're interested in being a Rotary Ambassador, again, it's going to be a matter of just a minimal amount of time to have 1, maybe 2 new members assigned to you and to be able to make a contact with that person so that you can kind of help them find out what's great in Rotary and where they might best fit in. One aspect, of course, of helping Rotarians find their spot in Rotary is making sure that Toledo Rotary is diverse and inclusive. And that's the subject today for our presenters. Maria Arcocha White is the founder of CEO of Inclusivity, a recognized leader in the diversity and inclusion field. She has worked with over a dozen Fortune 500 CEOs, hundreds of senior leaders, and thousands of managers, supervisors, and individual contributors throughout North America and Europe. Her professional career of more than 30 years includes acting as the first ever Hispanic sales and marketing manager for the Procter & Gamble Company, as well as a term as Vice President of Human Resources for R.R. Donnelley Logistics, beginning in 1999. She later served as Executive Vice President of Pope & Associates, a leading diversity and inclusion training and consulting firm, and is proud to have served in an advisory capacity on the U.S. Senate Task Force on Hispanic Affairs. Maria launched Inclusivity in 2013 to pursue a new approach in diversity and inclusion. With her staff, she facilitates in-depth change management, strategic culture change, leadership development, coaching, and consulting. Maria holds a master's degree in counseling from Xavier University and a bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Toledo. She's based out of Inclusivity's offices in Perrysburg, Ohio. Dr. Marvin Whitfield. He's a founder of Blue Force Mobile Training Team, a team of subject matter experts that conduct on-site training in the areas of professional development and cultural competency for individuals, businesses, and nonprofit organizations. Dr. Whitfield recognizes that every organization faces specific challenges as it pertains to leading its workforce and interacting with consumers. His team eliminates those challenges by providing clients with custom-designed training concepts that best match their needs and objectives. He believes that training should be an ongoing, engaging, and empowering process that is consistently evaluated and never ends. And this approach provides his clients with the skills needed to maneuver in today's changing work environment, both effectively and with confidence. Now, before moving to the private sector, Dr. Whitfield served as a team leader and senior instructor on a Department of Defense contract and conducted numerous training missions for the United States Army Intelligence Center of Excellence Training Division. His previous work experience also included more than 2 decades of law enforcement, where he served as a police officer and later a police commander. These experiences were utilized for training local police, safety agencies, and community partners in the areas of safety, leadership development, and communications. Dr. Whitfield has a Doctor of Philosophy degree in criminal justice, a master's degree in criminal justice administration, and an MBA in specializing in human resource management. The purpose of his qualitative research study for his PhD was to examine how implicit bias training influences an individual's awareness, knowledge, and skills in the area of cultural competency. He also regularly attends other advanced levels of training and seminars throughout the year to ensure that the courses his team offers remain on the cutting edge of practice. My fellow Rotarians, please welcome Maria White and Dr. Whitfield.
Thank you, Scott. Marvin and I are just thrilled to be here with you today, so thank you so much for taking your time and listening to what we have to share. The objectives for today's presentation, there we go, is to introduce you to the Rotary International's Diversity and Inclusion Statement and to share a little bit about the differences between diversity and inclusion and what they mean. We want to explain to you a little bit more about why Scott shared what he did around the Member Engagement Committee's focus on diversity and inclusion this year. We want to help to educate you a little bit about implicit bias and the connection between implicit bias and inclusion. And then we're going to share with you some ideas and some tools to help you be intentionally inclusive here at the Rotary. Oops. So the first thing I want to do is share with you the 2019 Rotary International Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Statement. And because it's a little bit long, I'm going to read it to you. What it says is that as a global network that strives to build a world where people take action and create lasting change, Rotary values diversity and celebrates the contributions of people of all backgrounds, regardless of their age, ethnicity, race, color, abilities, religion, socioeconomic status, culture, sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Rotary will cultivate a diverse, equitable, and inclusive culture in which people from underrepresented groups have greater opportunities to participate both as members and leaders. And that, in a nutshell, is why Marvin and I are here today. So Marvin's going to help us to kick off the presentation by sharing a little bit about some of the demographics and some of the business case for why focus on diversity and inclusion.
Okay, can we whip the slide? Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, why focus on diversity and inclusion now? Here's why. Whenever I take a look at the census chart, can you please turn down the lights, turn up the lights? I ask everyone to please look around the room with their fellow Rotarians. And remember the numbers seen on the chart. We have to ask ourselves, do we represent the community in which we serve? You can dim the lights. I'm asking you to look at the second chart. Keep it in mind when you look around the room the first time of the gender makeup. I think we all can agree that we have some work to do. There's a big difference when you look around this room and we look at the community itself. So let me share some information with you on why diversity, inclusion, engagement is positive and has positive impact for the Rotary itself. Diverse organizations achieve better results. That's a fact. Companies with more women on the boards statistically outperform their peers over a period of time. Inclusive teams that are diverse in nature outperform their peers over time. Gender diverse companies perform at a 15% higher rate, and organizations that are ethnically diverse perform at a 35% higher rate.
So let's talk a little bit about why inclusion and diversity matter here at the Rotary. This past year, in 2017, Rotary International did a planning survey and asked the entire membership about engagement and how that affected their membership and feelings of inclusion within the Rotary. And what you can see up on the chart here, or the slide, is that 80% of Rotarians who are engaged with their club are more likely to remain a Rotarian. So as we talked earlier about retention, this is very important. 65% of engaged Rotarians said that they planned to volunteer in some way for an event. 89% of engaged members said, and this is pretty important, that failing to make a friend or to connect with others within the Rotary would lessen their connection to the Rotary and thus their engagement. And finally, 83% of Rotarians who felt that the activities that the Rotary was engaged in matched up with their skills and abilities were more likely to be more involved. So this organization is trying to make a huge difference in the community in the Toledo and surrounding areas. And the only way we can do that is by engaging and involving our members. And so what we know is that inclusion connects with engagement. And that is going to be how we're going to help our members become more connected and more involved. We're going to make them feel more included than they already do. So we have made a strategy in the member engagement organization, in our committee. What we've decided is that we're going to focus on increasing our diversity so that we can appeal to a broader population of potential members. We're going to increase inclusion by being more welcome and open to new people, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit, and that we're going to increase our engagement by facilitating participation. So how are we going to do that? Well, first, I want you to think a little bit about the word diversity. Oftentimes, when you think about the word diversity, and if I were to ask you, a lot of people automatically go to race and gender, and that those really are the two things that define diversity. But today, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think a little bit more inclusively about the word diversity. And what we mean by that, and by the way, on each of the tables, there's a handout for you that has this model on it, because you're going to do a little exercise with this model in a little bit. But what we talk about at Implicit is something called the elements of individuality. Each person individually represents diversity. And once you start helping everyone to feel like they are a part of the diversity, that's going to cause them to engage. So when we define diversity, we should be defining diversity by all these different things. And the Rotary, by the way, Rotary International, did an amazing job of defining diversity in the statement that I just shared with you, because they didn't just say, we're going to focus on race and gender. What they said was, we're going to focus on many, many differences that define the people who are part of our organization. So inclusion means that everyone not only has a seat at this table here, but they also have a voice in deciding what is going to be served, when we eat, what we talk about, and how we eat our food. So it isn't just inviting people into the Rotary, which we're doing a pretty good job of doing. It's once they get there, once they come to the table that we're at here today, it's that they feel included in that table discussion, that you make them feel like they're wanted here. And we're going to share with you some ideas of how you can make that happen. So just keep in mind, when you think about the difference between diversity and inclusion, diversity is a fact. Everybody is diverse. Every single person in this room is diverse. In fact, studies show that identical twins are diverse. So if identical twins are diverse, surely the person sitting next to you is different from you. But inclusion is an act. And in order for us to get engagement, we have to have inclusion. And in order for us to get inclusion, we have to do something intentional about it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the connection between implicit bias and inclusion. And to do that, here's Marvin.
Now, this is the fun part for me, science. You can't be inclusive without managing your biases. And when people hear the word bias, they automatically think negative. Not all biases are bad. Some biases actually keep you safe. But a bias becomes a problem when you allow it to impact your decision-making process and has a negative impact on another individual. It plays a major role in how we view people and how we interact with people. And let's go into a little bit to the science, but not too deep. Implicit bias is an intellectual process that causes us to have a negative view of specific people or other groups. It's usually towards individuals outside of one's own group, or race or ethnicity. Implicit bias attitudes are formed throughout a lifetime of influence and exposure. So in other words, implicit bias is a collection of information that you obtain over a life experience. That's why you'll never hear me as a researcher say that your perspective is wrong, because I didn't walk in your shoes. I didn't live through your experiences. But if you have a negative bias towards an individual, person, place, or thing, you will hear me say, let me share some facts with you. Let me counter some of those biases you picked up over the years. So, let's talk about how we process information. The human brain can process up to 11 million pieces of information per second. Per second, that's a lot of information. But we're only consciously aware of 40 bits per second. The brain cannot effectively process all this information simultaneously. So we automatically take mental shortcuts. We go from analytical to intuitive. And this is where we're prone to make mistakes. This is where biases begin. When you talk about biases in a mental capacity, I like to refer to the flexibility of your brain, how flexible your brain is. Sometimes when I'm doing a lecture or teaching a course, people always ask me, what's the difference between a person with bias and a person who's prejudiced? And I simply say, the flexibility of your brain. Okay? We all live based off of stereotypes of what we've learned over the years. But if you take and share information with an individual that's fact-based, and they can change their perception, that means they only had a bias. But if you give a person facts, and their brain is not flexible enough to adjust, then most likely they're prejudiced, because that's their core belief no matter what you tell them. And so that's why it's very important as an organization we continue to educate ourselves, increase our cultural competency, to become more aware, to gain more knowledge, so we can develop those skills to interact with other individuals, so we become more inclusive and also more diverse. So, I always like to play games when I go into the science and talk about flexibility. So we're gonna play a quick game as a group, and it's called the Stroop effect. Now, let me put a disclaimer out there. When Dr. Stroop first put this here test together, it was designed to measure whether a brain have damage or not, was able to process information at a certain rate. The Stroop color and word test, like I said before, was designed to measure damage in the brain. It's a cognitive flexibility on how the brain can react when introduced to new information. As a group, on the next slide, I'm going to want you to name the color, but not the word you see in the box. Okay, so what's going to happen is a box is going to come up. There's going to be 3 rows. I'm going to say row 1, and as a group, without being analytical, but intuitive, like we do on a day-to-day basis, I want you to shout the color, not the word. Then I'll say box 2 and box 3. And then we're going to do the same thing for the next box. So we're going to take and measure our mental flexibility. Everybody ready? Okay. Row 1. Green, red, purple, green. Row 2. Come on, everybody's group. Blue, yellow, blue, red. Row 3. Green, yellow, red, purple. All right, good job. That was the prep, not for the real test. So I always have my stragglers on the first one around. Ready? Row 1. Row 2. Row 3. So what do you think happened? That brain had to be flexible, didn't it? The first test was easy, okay? The first test was easy. The word and the color was congruent. There was no conflict. The second was more of a challenge. The word and the color did not match. So our brain had to battle with itself in order for the truth and the fact to come forward. Okay, we had to mentally compete with ourselves. So I always ask that question. Why don't we apply this process in our daily decision making? We find ourselves viewing a person in a negative light based on a stereotype. Why don't we use our mental flexibility to challenge ourselves with facts? Think about that for a second. It's so quick when we meet an individual to go negative. It's human nature. So I'm challenging you to use your mental flexibility. And we see how difficult it can be. It's going to be challenging because we like to go with what we know, what we feel comfortable with. We feel more comfortable within our biases. But we got to challenge ourselves to go outside of that realm. So in summary, you have to make a conscious decision to manage your biases. They don't come natural. I'm still working on mine, even though I've done research in this area. Every quarter I test myself, and I still got a long way to go. Because it's hard to change those lived and learned experiences. But I can tell you from experience and through research I've done, it can be done. So we're going to stop here at that point about biases. And Maria is going to talk a little bit more about conscious inclusion.
So basically what Marvin did in a nutshell here is he just demonstrated for you what this slide says. Whoops, right here. That we are naturally exclusive. Our brain tends to go to and through our comfort zone. And so we tend to gravitate towards people that are like us because it's easy for us. We don't have to think about it. We kind of know what they're going to say and what they're going to do and how they're going to behave, and it makes it simple for us to interact with them. So I want you to think about when you walk into a Rotary meeting, where do you sit and who do you sit with? Typically, what you do is you look for somebody you know, and you get in line with them at the food buffet, and you follow them to a table, and you sit down with them at a table, and you talk about the things that you usually like to talk about. It's hard for your brain, and it's hard for you to intentionally look for a new member or look for someone you don't know very well and ask them to join you and to sit down and talk to them about something that you may not know anything about. That's what we're going to be asking you to do a little bit later. But right now, what we want to do is we want to give you a little bit of a hint about when you invite that new person to sit down next to you, what kind of conversation you're going to have with them. At your tables, there is the element of individuality that I shared with you a little bit earlier. And that's going to be your cheat sheet, if you will. On that element of individuality, there are all sorts of ideas of things that you can talk about. But what I'd like you to do, each of you, is to select 1 to 2 things that mean a lot to you, that define you as a person, or that you're extremely interested in. Something that matters and that will matter to the person that you share it with. And then what I want you to do is I want you to look at your table, and hopefully there might be 1 or 2 people there that you don't know very well. And I want you to get with that person or persons. If there's an odd number, you're going to need to do a little group of 3. And I'm going to give you just a few minutes to get to know that person and to have that person get to know you. What I'm going to have you do, the instructions that are up on the screen will show you that you're going to, here we go. You're going to chat with them and discuss the element of individuality and why it's important to you. And then you're going to listen to them do the same thing for you. Any questions? Go. Oh, I'm so sorry. They're right up front. Kathy? We've got about 2 minutes left. All right, you want to start wrapping up and make sure everyone got a chance to share. Make sure everyone gets a chance to share. Okay, if you could all please turn your attention back to me. Hello, everybody. Come back. Come back. Come back. This is always the part in the workshop where I have the hardest time getting people to come back to me. So what did you notice happened in the room as soon as this exercise started? What happened to the energy in the room? It went way up, didn't it? Because people want to be known and they want to develop relationships. I want you to look up here at our third test, the third part of the four-way test. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Inclusion and bringing in diversity, I promise you, will build goodwill and it will give you better friendships and more of them, which is a wonderful thing. So, let's talk a little bit about what you can do individually to become more inclusive and to do a better job of managing your biases so you can include diversity.
Okay, number one, you can take an implicit bias awareness test by going to the www.Toledo, can you bring it back up for us, sir? You can just leave it up. Thank
you can leave those up, thank you.
.org for free. It takes about 10 minutes for an assessment.
Be approachable. This one's really important. When you meet somebody, smile, offer your hand. Let them know you'd like them to sit down with you and that you want to interact with them.
I hate the word when people say, I'm tired of being politically correct. Google it and then be it. Okay? Let's watch what we say and how we say it. Let's be sensitive on the type of words we use as far as left wing, right wing, of those people.
Notice exclusion and do something about it. When you see someone standing by themselves, or if they're at back of the room looking lost and don't know where to sit, ask them to join you, introduce them to your friends, welcome them into your conversation.
When you're making a decision about a process that includes individuals, make sure we're considering a range of different types of genders and races and things of that nature. You know, when you're doing the grant, putting a committee together, whether you're picking a chair and a co-chair, also during the grant selection process.
Ask questions, be curious, kind of like what you just did. Remember this exercise that you just finished. There's always something new that you can learn about others. I'll bet that if you were sitting next to someone that you've known for a while, and you did this exercise for a while with maybe 4 or 5 of these elements, that you're going to learn something new about them.
And with confidence, if you see somebody, especially me, doing or saying something that may be considered biased, pull us to the side and correct us. There's nothing wrong with that because, you know, sometimes we may say things without thinking or taking certain things in consideration. So don't allow us to continue perpetuating that. Pull us to the side in confidence and just take corrective action through a conversation.
Oops. Get out of your comfort zone. This one is the toughest one. So if you always sit at the same table with the same people, join a new table. Or better yet, ask somebody else to join you at your table.
Get to know your colleagues, especially the ones you have a negative opinion about. When I first met Tim, you gonna say more?
Me
but
too.
over time, as I got to know him, he's a great guy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And last but not least, if you'd like to become more inclusive, become a Rotary ambassador. Here are some of the folks that have already signed up and said that they wanted to be one, and now is your opportunity to do the same. If you'd like to become a Rotary ambassador, please contact Scott Hinshaw, and there is his contact information right up there. I'm sure he would love to recruit you to this process. All right. Thank you so much for your attention, and we do have a few minutes if you would like to ask either Marvin or I any questions.
I'm not going to bother getting on the mic, but are you finding it easier to reach people who are younger to get them to buy into this, or people who are older and have already kind of set their biased ways?
Great question. He asked, are we finding it easier to have younger folks be more inclusive than older folks? And I would tell you there is absolutely no correlation between age and inclusion, level of inclusion. I have found younger folks who are very resistant to being inclusive and to bringing diversity more into their lives. And I work with 70, 80-year-olds that are some of the most inclusive people I have ever met, including Tim, who's not that old. But yeah, Tim.
My question is that when you met Marvin for the first time, for your first meeting,
Me and Marvin?
yes, how long did you converse with each other? And how many topics did you cover? My guess is 1 hour.
Oh no.
Yeah. It's supposed to have been an hour, but I think it was
Get close.
supposed to have been an hour, but I think it was the first conversation was at a Starbucks that lasted.
Very first time you met her.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
the
first time meeting. It was about 3 hours and 45 minutes, and we had to keep saying, we're going to wrap up. But this exchange
All
of
right.
information, ideas, and perspectives just went on and on.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was actually late to pick up my daughter because I completely lost track of time. I was late for dinner with Catherine. Yep. All right. Thank you.
Marvin, I'll give you your hug later. Okay. Thank you very much. That's a great program. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. We have a book that outlines the history of Toledo, and we will make a contribution to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund in your name. So, thank you very much. Kevin, are we having a meeting next week? No. We have no meeting next week. Okay. Father Ron, are we meeting on the 9th? Okay, so we're meeting here. No. Where are we meeting? Stranahan. Stranahan Theater on the 9th. I'll try to keep up. We have meetings later. One meeting later today. It's youth services. It's at the Pascal Room. And we are adjourned. So, excuse me. You know what? What a horrible day I'm having, Chuck. Would you please make me feel better? Oh, George, I will do better. I will make a significant contribution to Polio Plus.
I think it was excluded. Evelyn Wood, the mother of speed reading, died on this date in 1987 at the age of 86. Despite complaints that nobody could read faster than 350 words a minute, Mrs. Wood zipped through novels at a rate of 10,000 to 15,000 words a minute. Mrs. Wood's speed reading system essentially required the reader to read down the page, not from left to right, and to read groups of words, not a word at a time, and to avoid involuntary rereading of material. Despite Mrs. Wood's assertion that reading faster meant remembering more, her institute was often ridiculed. Woody Allen offered a joke aimed at the Wood method when he stated I took a course in speed reading and was able to read War and Peace in 20 minutes. It's about Russia.
Thank you very much, and now we are adjourned.